Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished panelists. Many thanks for joining us today. I am honored to moderate today's discussion on the critical topic of leveraging the private sector for social and economic transformation and climate action. This side event is organized by the Katowice Committee of Experts on the Impact of the Implementation of Response Measures, KCI for short, in collaboration with UN Global Compact Network Malaysia and Brunei, and the Regional Coordination Center of Asia Pacific. This event will explore how the private sector can play a pivotal role in advancing climate action and socio-economic development. And they hear some good examples of how that is being done. As we know, the Paris Agreement calls for rapid and far-reaching changes across all sectors. While governments play an essential role, the scale of transformation required cannot be achieved without the private sector. With significant influence over capital flows, innovation and job creation, businesses have the potential to drive meaningful climate action and contribute to equitable socio-economic progress. We must leverage private sector climate action for social equity, and that does not inadvertently deepen inequalities. This underpins the importance of today's session. And by the way, I'm Angelina Amatutu-Mensah, co-chair for KCI, and I'm moderating this session. Before we begin, I just want to provide a brief of KCI's work on private sector engagement. The KCI, as part of its work plan under Activity 8, is currently finalizing a technical paper on the identification and exchange of experiences and best practices in engaging the private sector to facilitate the creation of decent work and quality jobs in low greenhouse gas emitting sectors. This paper's objective are to identify best practices, including from small and medium-sized enterprises, to facilitate the creation of quality and decent jobs. Some of the key recommendations that you can look forward to from this paper include the importance of the establishment, a transparent and equitable playing field in which businesses can lead innovations, the establishment of monitoring and evaluation networks to track the progress of private sector engagement, and enhancing collaborative learning amongst peers. These are some of the few key takeaways from the report, and I hope you all read it once it is out. Today, I'm excited to delve into the discussion on how private sector climate actions can spur broader socioeconomic development. To unpack this conversation further, we are privileged today to be joined by two experts. The first is Sandra Hani, Global Policy Lead for Trade and Climate at the International Chamber of Commerce. Shall we give it up for her? In her work, Ms. Hani focuses on major global environmental, climate change, and trade-related issues relevant to the world of business. She leads ICC's policies work on regulatory development related to trade and climate, a very sensitive topic for developing countries, trade and climate change, and is responsible for ICC's broader climate engagement, particularly on climate sustainable finance and carbon market. Many thanks for joining us today. Next is Nishant Kumar. I hope shall we also give it up, please? Senior Vice President of Sustainability and Quality at Ayana Power. Mr. Kumar is a senior professional with over 20 years of experience in the areas of quality, health, safety, environment, social governance, and corporate social responsibility. He has extensive and diverse background in industries such as FMCG, infrastructure, pharma and renewable energy, and leverages a well-rounded perspective to his role, which will also benefit from today. At Ayana, he has led sustainability initiatives since inception and guiding the company towards holistic, comprehensive, and impact-oriented policy. Both speakers, you are very welcome. So let us begin with discussion today. I'll start with you, Mr. Kumar. There has been an increasing role of the private sector in combating climate change. In your perspective, what role does private sector play in advancing socio-economic development in parallel with climate actions? What are some examples of these from Ayana Power in terms of initiatives and progress being run?
Thanks. In terms of organization, we've established somewhere around 2017 and by BIA, British International Investment. And we are mostly focused on the solar and wind with round the clock and also pumped hydro and other sector. One work the company does is, climate mitigation aspect. But again, we also understood that it is just a just transition kind of thing that also includes employment part. We definitely need skilled manpower who can construct the projects, who can operate the projects. And the scale at which the sector is growing, we need skills at a right level, right? So in terms of developing skill, we partnered with our investors, other companies, and we have developed a skill development center where we are providing free of cost training to local youth from the rural areas because our projects are there. And we are helping them to get a right set of skill for establishment of a solar plant and wind plant and also operation and maintenance of the same. In this way, it has not only helped the companies to get right set of skill, but also the community helping their improve their livelihoods, right? And in recent past, we have seen that it's not just about the country. We have seen that there's many people who are moving out of India to help other countries in establishing solar plants and wind plants. So the impact is not only local, but it's also global.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kumar. I think your work is quite timely. 2 days ago, we had a session on youth and children, and this focus on empowering the youth and children in renewables is quite remarkable. We thank you very much for that. But for the avoidance of doubt for those who are here, as I mentioned, my name is Angelina Mensah. The moderator, Mustafa Kamal Gay, couldn't be here with us, and I'm stepping in for him. So don't be confused with the name on the board, Mustafa Gay, but I am Angelina Mensah. I'm just stepping in for him. Thank you very much. Turning to you, Ms. Honey, and building on those comments, investors are some of the stakeholders you engage with. What, in your opinion, are the trends of investor perception of linking socioeconomic aspect of climate action into private sector business models? Is there an appetite for this model?
Thank you so much, and also thank you for inviting me. Maybe let me just start explain a little bit who we are, because I think it's an important. The International Chamber of Commerce, and we are also the focal point of the business and industry constituency here at the UNFCCC process of bringing together really a broad global business from all sectors, all sizes. And we are in 170 countries, so also a large footprint in the global south. And this is really important to bring this inclusive perspective to the discussion. And we have been following the important work the KCI is doing, and really encourage you to continue that work and are here to provide input. On your specific question, I think overall we do indeed see really an appetite of the investor community to not only look at climate risks, but also at the socio-economic aspects. They're, not only setting their own targets, but they're also increasingly working with companies to really implement transition plans and really also to drive action. This is mostly, we see this currently as a result of also a regulatory pressure coming from the government. So there's a good incentive from there. And then also investors really encouraging governments to take more strengthened measures. What we are also seeing, what's really interesting is it's really, there seems to be a stronger consideration on broader economic aspects. So really also about ensuring economic growth, also about energy security, security of supply chains. So these are all important aspects that they are increasingly taking into consideration. Maybe one point what we also see what's really important, and I think this links very importantly to the finance discussion here as well, is really while there is a strong commitment from the private investment, it's really important to also recognize that just the investment climate is not, the conducive investment climate is just not there. And I think this is particularly the case for the developing emerging economies. And I think this is really where we are quite strongly also in what at a country level can be done in terms of also creating the right enabling environment, with also we see a potential with the NDCs also giving these incentives, but we do recognize there needs to be a consideration on the global level on how to better basically reform and make the financial system fit for purpose, and also really look at the key finance barriers with regards to private sector finance. So I will stop here for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hani, for this insight. I mean, was it yesterday or 2 days ago, the African ministers were really crying foul about not wanting to engage in private sector and financing, and you fit it really on the nail because the atmosphere, the conditions are not conducive enough for that. And so I think this is a very good takeaway home. I mean, we from developing countries are very wary of private sector financing. Thank you very much for this insight. Now, speaking of investors, Mr. Kumar, Ayana has worked with investors to develop its Just Transition program that incorporates community engagement and skills development. Could you kindly share with us how this process unfolded and what approach Ayana took its engagement with investors? How did Ayana convince its investors regarding this policy? And what role do investors and other financiers have in simultaneously advancing climate actions and development goals? Over to you. Quite a load.
No, we were, quite lucky in terms of having good investors, and they were pretty much like-minded. And the focus was not just a climate fund or climate mitigation business, but also they were focused on development impact. So ultimate goal for them was development impact and how to maximize it with the investment, right? We had BII, we have BII, NIIF, there's the Government of India Fund, BII is UK Government Fund, and Eversource, and other UK DFIs are there. So since they were like-minded and they were demanding in terms of impact, the positive impact, so all it took for us was to design a proper skill development project, including community engagement project, and present it to them. We are happy to share that our first skill development project was funded 90% by UK DFI and 10% by CDC first, when we did not start our business. It was the first project that we were doing. And after that, the second project was almost funded 50% by CDC first. And then we started, and the projects are self-sustainable now. The kind of impact is that apart from just building these projects of solar and wind, where we are somewhere we have offsetted 7 million tons of GHG emission till date. We are also developing a pool of youth, especially also focused on women, and also from the rural part of the country where the quality of education may not be that high to get into this. And other thing is that the pace at which the country is growing in terms of achieving its net zero target, the policy and education system are not running parallel. So this intervention is very much required by a private sector to match the requirement of this. So as on date, we have trained almost 1,500 youth, and almost our target was to achieve 70% placement of them, and we have successfully achieved those 70% placement. So we are thankful to the investors who were like-minded, whose approach was more on development impact, not just building solar and wind plant or round-the-clock plants, but also on the development impact. If any question in specific, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you very much. I believe that the issue of policy coherence is a problem for many countries when they are developing their just transition frameworks. As you've rightly mentioned, the education system and the policy is running not in parallel, they are running at parallel ends. And it's something we need to look at critically, because without that, the transition will leave people behind. Thank you very much for such insight. Ms. Honey, the ICC has also worked extensively with businesses and private sector actors across the world. What are some of the initiatives or policy programs work have you been involved in or observed that advance private sector climate actions while also promoting broader development goals? Are there any positive case studies that can be shared?
Thank you very much for the question. So I think there is overall, as also my colleague here mentioned, that there are many efforts that companies are doing. We also at the organization level, we're particularly looking at this importance of also what the trading system can do. And where we see that there's a huge potential in trade playing a greater role in enabling the transition. So we have been developing a very important work and started a couple of years ago, where we really brought together a really large group of leading trade finance banks, as well as corporates, and really looked at what they would need to better understand what's the level of sustainability of their when they make their decision on a trade finance transactions. So there is, based on this consultation, we saw that there are currently no effective work, that there is no effective work out there, and also in terms of policy, not effective policy to enable that. So this is where we started this work, and it was really about starting from the UN SDGs and standards that are already out there to really come up with a basic system, basic matrix that they can apply internally when they make decisions. And this is again, it's really not just about the environmental element of the SDGs, but again also about the social and economic aspects. So we have launched. We are already in the third iteration of the work. Have launched the third one at COP this year to really getting more granular on what banks would need to make this decision, and really. Something coming out of that is also a need to look also for governments into more how they can bring these aspects into their taxonomies that they develop, and their different regulations. So we are in touch with different countries there as well on how these insights can be integrated. So that's a very concrete examples from the ground on how we what we do.
Thank you very much for those insights. Mr. Kumar, I wonder if any of these resonate with you. From experience as a private sector actor, what barriers, pitfalls did you experience in implementing climate actions and your Just Transition program? How did you overcome them, and what recommendations will you give to other private sector actors?
Right. So, as a nation or something, when we speak about the pitfalls or something, the challenges in terms, we face challenges, but those challenges are manageable, right? In terms of resources, the plant requires land, the plant requires other infrastructure, right, to achieve the targets or the scale that we are looking forward for, okay. The other thing is in terms of social was acceptance of local community who have their certain barriers in mind especially for women, whether women can work in the construction field or operating a solar plant. Those were challenges. We started with icebreakers. We started this initiative by introduction of 1 or 2 women out of 200 youth kind of thing. And slowly, today, I can say that almost in our skill development center, 50% women are participating. And there are several who are working in our plants, who are operating and who are working on a technical aspect of it. And then few got promoted and they have joined certain government offices as well. So the major barrier is the mindset, where it takes time for someone to accept it in the first place. But when they see that okay, there is a success and there are certain things good turning out from the project, and they accept it. In terms of climate mitigation projects, land is one thing which is certainly a challenge. And we have a huge parcel of land, and in that. It was all about the policies and the way negotiation and the way we, communicate or engage with the community. That helps us a lot. So say, for example, land, earlier it was a procurement process that we will procure the land and we'll build our solar plants. Now it is a hybrid model or even the leasing model where the landowners, the waste landowners are there who will be leasing the land, and every month or every year they'll be getting a fixed income with increments year on year. So that model has worked in terms of getting land resources, getting land for transmission lines and other things. And definitely government is also positive. There are a lot of CNI, which is commercial and industrial sector, which has come up, which are directly procuring power. We are constructing plant for one of the largest aluminum manufacturer, and we'll be supplying them, we'll be helping them to reduce their emission. And this will help them to meet the global demand where the carbon tax and other things are coming in market in picture. These companies will be able to compete with those. So the energy where the off-taker of energy again plays a critical role. We are also constructing plant for Indian Railways, which is going to help them for achieving their emission targets. So land resources with right community engagement and right policy and programs of the company, we were successful. For certain things, we went slow, especially the women engagement in community development aspect, and we have achieved those results.
Yeah, thank you for this insight. Ms. Honey, a key ingredient in unlocking the climate action potential of private sector, particularly for SMEs, is finance. Findings in a new report by the ICC indicates that while a large majority of public and private finance institutions now offer green finances to SMEs, only minuscule percentage have access to it. In your view, what are the key approaches to bridge this gap and extend green finance to new market entrants?
Thank you very much for this important question. And this really goes, so this report that we published, this really goes back to a survey we did, really engaging our whole chambers of commerce network and also particularly from developing emerging economies. And I think it was very clear from that survey engagement that while there is a very strong commitment and willingness to do more, there is also there are huge barriers, reference to huge barriers, in particular SMEs are facing, and one of them is the finance issues. And I think this is really where we see bridging this finance gap is very, very critical. In particularly, one aspect of financing is the high the short-term finance. So they're particularly facing when they want to make some investments. We were in touch, for instance, with the tourism sector when they want to make some changes in their operations. They face a high upfront cost, and they are just not able to bear that cost currently. And then there is also the lack of the financial instruments and the support from from the banks and also from the government side. So I think we really feel that bridging this short term is very important. This is where also governments can come in with fiscal incentives and really also seeing what support can be provided there. But then it's also about what, in a long term, what are kind of the innovative SME financing solution that can be developed to support them. And I think this is where we see that governments really need to more strongly work together with the financial sector, with the banks, to really see what's working, what testing different new solutions, and really trying to see if they can implement something that really helps them to more easily access financing.
Thank you. When you talk about the fiscal incentives, are we looking at tax rebates and those? Okay. Thank you very much for those insights. I'm now going to open the floor as we thank the two for those very insightful interventions. I would like to open the floor and hear views and questions from you. You are welcome to take the floor at any time for questions or comments. Please, you would mention your name and where you are coming from. Thank you.
Hello, thank you very much for the panelists. My name is Joshua, I'm from Indonesia. Actually, I have a question for Ms. Sandra. Maybe I describe a bit what we do. I'm a social entrepreneur where we transform plastic waste and husk waste in Indonesia. It is a big problem in Indonesia because the farmers with low-income farmers, they cannot commoditize or utilize their husks, so they just burn it. It leads to more carbon, right? So we buy it from them and we transform it into a decking. That could be the solution also. So we do many projects in Indonesia, in Bali, and next year we do a project in World Expo in Indonesia Pavilion, where we made a main stage from our decking as a substitute for natural decking. So I really interested with, and I hope and I believe the ICC is quite related to SMEs. Are there any chance that we could collaborate, or what is your perspective about SE like Plana, that like any collaboration that we could make or any help that maybe ICC could provide to expand our reach and implementation for our sustainable solution? Thank you.
Thanks so much for the very good question. And also for the efforts you're doing. I think in particular the plastics and pollution crisis is a very tricky one. And as many of you know, there is important negotiations coming up on that as well. So I think we really appreciate also such efforts there. I think already getting in touch with your local chambers would be a really good first step. And what we are also doing is, so we have the World Chambers Federation. We also have World Chambers Federation congresses regularly. The next one on a regional basis will take place in Kenya in April 2025. And there will be another big one coming up next year as well. So these are kind of the opportunities where I'm happy to share more information, where there is a lot of networking possibilities. Also, we're also trying to not only invite businesses and chambers, but also governments. So there's really a bit of a private and public dialogue happening there. So I think that's definitely one of the opportunities, but to show your work and to leverage that. But I think we always say, from a business perspective, also this engagement with governments is very, on a domestic level, is very important. Also in terms of what you're seeing works, what doesn't work, and really informing their the policy development. I think we are now really this concepts of co-creation of policies, so where really businesses and governments are coming together. I think this is very important also with regards to having coordinated approaches and policies in place.
Do we have any more? Sure. Okay.
Yeah, I want to ask Mr. Kumar. My name is Zulkifli Amin Mamat. I'm from Malaysia. So just to ask Mr. Kumar, do you have any technology to provide green power for data center? Because we have a lot of new development for data center in Malaysia, but we need really new technology, but not like solar or something. We don't want that. We want like generator, like similar with generator, but green technology. Because we have many, many places in Malaysia. Thank you very much, Mr. Kumar and the moderator.
Sorry that we are not into that business. We are into solar, wind, also pumped hydro, and we supply power to the government, to the utility from where it gets distributed. If you really wish, out of the box, if you really wish, you can go for rooftop solar, and there are certain other things coming up for the localized renewable energy. Okay, since it is data center, so you may not opt for a green hydrogen, which is coming up or which is in progress, right? From which like large furnaces and other things are being operated. But you can look for the rooftop solar or the localized small units for the individual business centers. We don't have that. Thank you.
I'm just curious. The last one who spoke about having a green kind of generator for database energy source. What will be the advantage, if you can throw light on it for us?
Come again? Sorry.
You wanted a generator-based green technology for the data services instead of solar panels. And I'm just wondering, what is the advantage in that?
Because we don't want to depend on in Malaysia, we have National Electrical Company. So they supply direct to any user. But now in one place, because Cyberjaya is like Silicon Valley in America, so we invite all the people to come to develop data center. One of our big clients like Amazon and others coming. So now we want to supply direct this electric to data center. We don't want to depend on this National Electrical Company. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for this panel. I'm Lizzie Harnett. I'm a delegate for the Episcopal Church globally, and also work in climate finance as my day job as well for the Rocky Mountain Institute. My question is maybe a higher level than the two previous questions have been, but a lot of the discussions in the NCQG this week have focused on the need for grant-based finance rather than mobilizing private finance, with a particular focus on the risk of debt cycles from loans and other types of mobilized finance. I was wondering if you can speak a bit more to what are some of the risks of mobilizing private finance for climate action? What are some of the solutions for mitigating those risks? And in particular, really interested in how we can ensure that the quality of private finance mobilized is such that it takes into account things like human rights, indigenous rights, rights for women and children, which are often overlooked in a lot of private finance conversations. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's to the two of you. I know majority of it will come from you, but if Mr. Kumar also could add on his voice. Thank you.
Okay. First, I have no finance background, but to my understanding, the grants are mostly not sustainable in terms of, developing the business, or the freebies things are there, like it's not helping, development. So that is one aspect of it. The other aspect is that I'll just quote a very small example of a project that we did, which was through grant for the community. That was a microgrid, and microgrid using lithium-ion battery. That was for a very marginalized and small community in very remote location of the country. And it was also funded by UNDP. So UNDP, IANA, and other companies joined hand, and they developed this project. So with that project, we were able to provide round-the-clock power to 25 households, a very small household of marginalized community, which were not having any kind of energy access. Even to recharge their mobile phone, they were required to travel some 5-10 kilometers away. But in that, we again created a self-help group of women of individual houses who were collecting some amount from each house, a minimal amount. And then they were using this amount for development of the project. So say, for example, we provided them with light and other things. They introduced the solar water pump for their agriculture field. And then they kept on developing it. Later, to my understanding, the government power came in, and then, but the initial impact of that was quite good, and they were able to sustain it. So those kind of things were there. But yes, I think you can explain that.
I'm also not from the financial sector, but we do of course work a lot with our banks and investors, and in particular also informing discussions in the NCQG. And thank you for a very good question, because it's really something we have continuously really emphasized over the past months, that while we see a strong core public commitment, we see that as an important signal that needs to be there, because it will unlock then the steps outside, and then the efforts outside, and particularly from the financial sector, then needs to come with that. So I think the core commitment a strong core commitment needs to be there, but then we cannot just have that. We need to look at this outer layer or outer kind of enabling environment to really enable also a scale up in the private sector financing, and I think this is where we see really significant barriers, and it gets really back to the point I made earlier, that we just see the enabling environment is just not there, and I think there are three elements that need to be looked at from our perspective as a priority, and it's really on what can be done domestically. In terms of the governments creating also through the NDCs, really creating, giving the right signals, already clear commitments towards the targets, but I think there needs also to be other consideration on the enabling a strong offtake market for projects such as renewable energy, sustainable infrastructure. Also, investment protection laws need to be looked into. So I think these are all considerations that can be done locally, but then at an international level, there needs to be really the MDBs need to come in. I think we really we welcome efforts that they are currently taking, but we think that there is a lot of potential for them to play a greater catalyst role. So that's something also we are looking into. And then there is something that I've not heard it yet in the discussions here, but what's also a barrier is about this financial stability rules, so the macroprudential. In particular, Basel III, as we see that there are barriers that we see that are not very conducive to enabling investments in developing and climate projects in the global south. And I think these also, there needs to be a discussion and a debate on how this can be more balanced. I mean, a very specific example is really that even if the project has in the developing or in the emerging market has really huge potential, because the country is just having such a high debt risk, and the potential to invest is just not there. So some of the things.
Thank you very much. I saw a hand here.
Thank you very much. My question is about financial support. So most of the time, the climate vulnerable areas, they are found maybe, or they may not be aware of the availability of such kind of supporters. So is the climate finance really going to the right peoples? I mean, in terms of vulnerability, they are in need of it, but they don't know how to submit maybe their question or how to apply for that finance, and how much, to what extent that criteria are simple to be access that finances, and how you prioritize that vulnerable regions. And I want to know if really this climate finance is going to really the local communities that are in need of such kind of support. Yeah, thank you very much. And also you mentioned some point about the global south and also about the African states case. I want to be clear about what the position or the attitude or what they are thinking about the case of implementation of these SDGs and the global collaboration issues and the private business, especially inviting the business sector to the country and involvement of the private sector advantage in order to change this climate crisis. So do you think that the government is, because they are the policy makers, decision makers, so if the attitude around there, or if the welcoming environment is not there, so how to implement, how do you think that this is feasible in such kind of conditions? Thank you.
I think this is to you, honey, of Mr. Kumar.
Okay. I'll give one example of our investor, which is, they are into climate fund. And it's all about the kind of project they select, right? So it is not just the renewable energy, but there are a lot of EV projects, like electric buses are there, or small electric vehicles are there, or certain, small finances are there, right? So those kind of things are there. Even biogas, like someone quoted an example of the agriculture field burning, right? So they have installed few biogas plant where the community, collects the waste. It goes to the plant, and from there they generate biogas, and which is then supplied or this. So it's all about the kind of project you are projecting. And the other thing, what I understand, that it should not be considered as a grant. Some ROI has to be there with that, okay, which is acceptable, because if we keep, using these funds as grant, then a day will come that it may get exhausted, or it will not be meaningful, because that business will not sustain for a longer term. So the two key criteria, to my understanding, is one is the kind of project, the climate impact project, and also how sustainable those projects are in terms of, generating its own revenue and, sustaining it. And then other SDG goals and other goals are definitely part of it, which helps ESG goals and other things are there, which are part of the tick boxes, to my understanding. Yeah.
Thanks very much for the good question. In terms of the flow, where I think that's definitely one of the issues that needs to be looked at, if the financing is really going to the right places. And I think from what we heard through the survey and engagement, it's really not getting where it should go, and that there needs to be a major really a priority that in the discussion really needs to be addressed. In particular, then also the SMEs, and I think what can be done is really when I was mentioning the enabling framework, it's also a lot about this cooperation as well, with collaborations with the private sector. So really, this public-private collaborations are very important. We believe. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your interventions. At this juncture, I would like to ask for final remarks from both our speakers. I will start with you, Ms. Honey.
Thank you. I think I will end with I think we are, of course, fully supportive of the, I think we all agree that urgent actions really now that outweigh the cost of not doing anything. But I think there needs to be a really also a consideration of, in particular, if you are an SME and in particular if you are from the developing country and you don't have the resources and you don't have the capacities to do, then this becomes very complicated. And I also would like to add a point here, and I think we also heard here in the negotiating rooms. It's currently also becoming increasingly difficult for companies to comply with the huge complexity of regulations, reporting mechanisms, due diligence requirements, particularly also impacts we are seeing from the rollout of carbon border adjustment mechanism. I think these are things where there is a huge risk, in particular for SMEs and companies to being to face a huge administrative burden and also being shut out of important export markets. So I think these are important conversations to have in this space here. And we really support any focus on such discussions.
Mr. Kumar.
Thanks. The most important aspect of the private sector and the other stakeholder is that private sector is playing a key role, or is a link between the policy of the government and implementing the policy on ground and helping the society to achieve the goals or targets with reference to the climate fund. So the collaboration part is very much important, and it's also important that private sector is not just focused when we say collaboration, so it is just on the business where they are into. Say, for example, if we are into business of solar, we also need to forecast what are the risks in terms of waste that will be generated. So in terms of, we need to have a circular economy around the end of life product as well, so which gets into it. There are a lot of areas where we can work, but the key thing is that the private sector is acting more as a link between the government policies and the global policies and supporting the nation in development. And it has to work in that way.
In the interest of time, I would like to finish the event, and I'd like to thank our speakers for joining us today and for their interventions. And many thanks to you participants for joining us and engaging with us today. Thank you very much and have a good afternoon. Thank you.